Welcome back to Notre Dame Day. I'm Chris Liberto. Well, our next guest is Father Pat Reidy, an associate professor of law at Notre Dame, who also serves as a faculty director for the Church Properties Initiative within the Fitzgerald Institute for Real Estate, and who is an ordained Roman Catholic priest with the Congregation of Holy Cross. Father Pat is a member of the Notre Dame class of 2008, and as you'll find out, well, he's got quite a story over the last 5 years. Father Pat, I tell you what, thank you for joining us here on ND Day, and I should say welcome back to Notre Dame in the last year, right?
Thanks so much. No, it's wonderful to be home finally back here at Notre Dame and to join you on my first late night show here at Notre Dame Day.
Boy, late night at 9:15. I'll note that. But I tell you what, your work, we talked a little bit, it's intriguing, at its core, right? Maybe not a very well understood area of law. And talk about this initiative in property law. What is it, and kind of how does your work align, with the priesthood with the law in what we're doing here at Notre Dame?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Property law is not what most people go to law school thinking of studying, and in fact, you talk to most lawyers, they would say this was their least favorite class in law school. I took it in part because I was searching. I was searching for academic interests, and I knew going in that the Congregation of Holy Cross, the Roman Catholic Church, the University of Notre Dame, we own a lot of stuff, right? The church has lots of assets, and that patrimony of the church is meant to be stewarded, right? We, as part of our Christian mission, are meant to care for people, in part in and through the buildings that we've got. And so trying to understand how the law works around that is something that really captivated me.
So obviously, you told me in the break you went to Yale and went away from South Bend, and then Notre Dame draws you back. But what specifically drew you to the property portion of this? Obviously, beautiful churches and that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit an academic interest, right? I'm a big nerd, and I took property as a first-year law student and thought the concepts were interesting, the law was interesting, but also it's very practical, right? I went to law school and discerned law instead of other kind of more philosophical or theological disciplines because I wanted to make sure that whatever I studied had a real tangible impact, whether I was in the classroom or not. And the questions of property law and land use are ones that it's a little bit of blocking and tackling in the law, right? They're everyday, they're not the most exciting, and yet they are absolutely crucial to understanding what our faith community and other faith communities own, how they can put it to the best use, and ultimately where and how do our local governments, our local communities help or hinder us in carrying out our Christian mission.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the Church Properties Initiative specifically, and within the Fitzgerald Institute. There's a lot of energy around this program, but what is it exactly, and what kinds of projects do you look at daily?
Yeah, no, it was providential in a lot of ways. I go away to Yale, I discover this nerdy interest in property, think that maybe I can help the church through something with church properties, and my dear friend and mentor, Professor Dan Kelly, calls me up and says, hey, we're starting this Church Properties Initiative. Do you want in? Obviously, right? The Church Properties Initiative seeks to convene and contemplate around a couple questions that are of crucial importance to the Roman Catholic Church specifically, but ultimately other faith traditions. One is looking at adaptive reuse, all the properties that our church owns, other faith communities own, that maybe were used once upon a time for sacred worship, for religious education, but now maybe don't have the congregations, don't have the students. How can we use that property well and put it to service of the church, of the local community? We're also interested in helping religious orders and dioceses consider what it might look like to reorganize their assets and to be able to put what they have to better use.
Yeah, so why now, right? And it's one question with a lot of the church properties. And then also, do you find in your work that it's, one denomination versus another that you're seeing more of these properties, right, that pop up?
Yeah. I mean, I think the why now is, there are different explanations. I think, candidly, sociologists, economists are kind of grasping at straws to understand just what is going on with religious properties. I think partly there are demographic shifts in our country. If you could pick up some of the old churches in Buffalo or Pittsburgh or Cleveland and transplant them to Phoenix or Austin, they would be full, right? That's just sort of where the demographics of the Roman Catholic Church have shifted in this country. But there's also a history in our country where, when my parents were growing up, my grandparents were growing up, the Irish parish was on one corner, the Italian parish was on one corner. Like, we had neighborhood parishes, and that was so that we can gather there, we could walk to them. With modern technology, communication, transportation, we don't need block, churches on every city block as much anymore. And so the kind of larger suburban regional parishes make having as many church buildings as we've got a little bit unnecessary. So trying to figure out how to help churches and dioceses figure out, like, all right, if you've now combined 3 parishes into one, what do you do with those other buildings?
Yeah, what is an example, right, of some of the repurposing that you're doing with some properties across the country?
Yeah. So one of the research projects that I've been working on in the last year, and I'm really excited about, is looking at the Roman Catholic Church and other, especially Christian churches, that have taken their underutilized church property and tried to dedicate it to affordable housing. In some cases, it's the old sanctuary or the old grade school. In a lot of cases, it's the parking lot, right?
Sure.
The decrepit parish hall that's no longer being used for what it was originally designed. And that land in a lot of suburban areas, urban areas, is really valuable, right? And so being able to help faith communities and individual parishes think about, all right, if you wanted to take this, lawn, and you wanted to create a space where families who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to live in your community could potentially have shelter, and not just temporary shelter, but something more permanent.
Yeah. Well, look, it's exciting work that you're doing, and I know there's a lot of energy around fire, so I'm glad to have you back, and really you're doing tremendous work.
Thanks. No, it's wonderful to be home.
Absolutely. Father, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks.